I'll shut up.
Okay, folks, we are live now, so we've got them going, and I apologize that we got a little bit of a late start, but I was also told that we need to make sure under OMA that we do have the public participation. So we would not have been able to start the meeting had we not gone live. So I call the meeting to order. This is the Finance and Government Operations Committee of the City Council. All committee members are present today via Zoom. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference. Members of the public have the opportunity to address the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules published on the agenda and on our website Friday. We will call for speakers when we get the individual agenda items you signed up for. Here are the public comment ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee members only. Each participant has 2 minutes to present. Any disruptive conduct will result in removal of the meeting. We will now move to agenda item A, which is EC-258 Sanchez, EC-258 submission of the 5-year forecast, FY 2023 to FY 2027. Move receipt be noted. Need a second. Second by Councilor Bassan. Councilors, any questions for staff or administration? Anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mr. Chair.
Council, if there's no questions or comment, we're ready to call the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes,
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
we will now move on to agenda item B. That's O-55. Councilor Bassan. By request.
Mr. Chair, O55 Committee Substitute 2, amending the City Inspector General Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 17 of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque. I'd like to move it to pass.
And I need a second. Councilor Feeblecorn for the second.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to move a committee substitute number 3.
Okay, committee substitute number 3. And moving committee substitute number 3 is in your iPads. Need a second. Councilor Feeblecorn on the second. Councilors, any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilor.
if I may start with some background and some information on this, but I believe either way, I'm hoping that we can just vote on the committee substitute 3 and then move to the discussion. Can we take a vote on that, or should we? It looks like Councilor Davis might want to wait.
Yes, Councilor Davis has his hand up. Councilor Davis, please.
Yeah, I thank you, Councilor Bassan. I don't object to that. I think, but I wanted to ask you, when did the sub become available? I had a couple of questions this afternoon. They came, I think, from the administration saying they might not have had time to review it yet. Do you know when it was available, or when we've had time, folks have had time to do the analysis?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Davis, yes, we finalized the most recent committee substitute number 3 on Friday by making sure that we ended up getting the reconciliation between the AGO ordinance and the IG ordinance. I know Mr. Melendrez and Ms. Coulon have been working on it as well. I will say part of why I wanted to pass the committee substitute now and then have the discussion, but we can do it backwards. Of many of the changes that were in the 3rd committee substitute, although it was not available sooner, was we removed quite a bit of items that were in committee substitute 2 and before that the IG had put in there. But based off of Mr. Melendrez's review and legislation experience, some of it was not necessary. So the IG was supportive of the changes and the edits. Again, we removed a lot of it. I'm hoping that we can go ahead and start the conversation of hearing some of the concerns. And I realize the administration has expressed, and I understand they haven't had a lot of time to review. This has been in committee for a long time. And I think, and what I've expressed too was that I would really like to avoid a deferral. I know that they would like a deferral. I understand that that's clear. I'm not 100% opposed to it, but if the committee is willing, and what I had told the administration as well is let's talk about this tonight and hear some of the concerns, because some of what I heard, which with what they had reviewed so far, I reviewed with Ms. Kuladon and Mr. Melendrez, and we're not reading it the same way. So I think that if we can have some conversation about it, it might clarify that maybe there's more of a misunderstanding versus a misintent. And I would be prepared and hopeful that we could move this from committee tonight without recommendation, so that in the next 2 weeks, we can continue to have these discussions, but we can start moving this along. It's been in committee for quite some time now. And at this point, I don't want to delay. I'm willing to defer, but I don't want to delay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I appreciate that. And this is not my area of expertise, and I appreciate, I know the sponsor has worked on this quite a lot and gone back and forth. I think we can have the discussion wherever, and I don't want to do that here. I think that another sub, I think, needs the opportunity to go, in my opinion, needs to go to AGO. We are without an internal auditor. And I think, there's some discussion about how to do that. I would love to substitute this today if the sponsor be willing to defer long enough for AGO to give us their feedback and the administration to do so. But I understand the sponsor's willing or sense of urgency just to get this thing out of committee. But I really would like to hear, Mr. Chair, and maybe that's part of discussion. So I want the sponsor to have the bill she wants. So I do think we should substitute that here in committee, but I would think that I'm inclined to say we ought to defer it if no one's had a chance, if the other pieces of the puzzle have not had a chance to look at it. But I would listen to the sponsor if she wants to discuss it. But my rambling aside, I think the sponsor gets the bill she wants first, so I would support the substitute.
And Mr. Chair, I did speak to Mr. Perea a little bit ago and explain to him some of the changes. He didn't seem to indicate that there was an urgent or very strict request for review. I explained that most of the changes from the second substitute to this third substitute are more technical or removal of the things that were added in that have become either problematic from the expression, whether it be from administration or others, and they've been removed. So it's going back to what people had already kind of learned about before, which is why, again, with what I talked with Mr. Perea, he indicated that if we get it out of committee and still there's that timeline between council, I'm also willing to defer it at council if we need to. But I also don't, again, I think that there's a big, strong differentiation between delaying and deferring. And at this point, if it's a deferral for work and for fairness, but AGO did not, or at least the chair of AGO did not seem to indicate a significant problem with it, and that we could review and convene on it, being that the changes being made were to reciprocate between the two bills. It was not something that was changing the full structure of AGO.
Thank you, Councilman Busan. Do we have Mr. Perea?
No, Mr. Chair, Mr. Perea doesn't attend he's part of the AGO committee. And so he is not here tonight. I believe that we have Marisa Vargas, who is the internal auditor. The interim internal auditor, and she can speak to her preference and reasoning and her conversations with the AGO and chair as well, if she would like. I would love to hear from her too.
Thank you, Marisa. The floor is yours, Ms. Vargas.
Mr. Chair. In speaking with AGO and particularly Mr. Perea, he's supportive of the changes made to the ordinance, and there wasn't anything of significance. It's minor tweaks here or there, and so he's been aware of those changes, and he's supportive of it going forward.
Thank you. Mayor's conference room. Looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and committee members, I also spoke to Mr. Perea today in the late afternoon. I believe that he would be amenable to look at this and also have some feedback from his fellow committee members. It is true that he said that he's kind of believing what the staff has told him. However, he has not actually had the opportunity to look at the changes itself. And I would urge the committee to actually defer this, because we did receive this morning. And then we got the red line around 2 o'clock, and Director Yara and I had about 20 minutes to review Ordinance 55. We have not even looked at Ordinance 56 because we did not have the time. And both of these ordinances goes hand in hand. We have multiple concerns in just reviewing these changes within 20 minutes. And if you want, I can go line by line, but I would like to have more time. And there are substantial changes as a result of amendments and floor substitute, and this is the third one. I would like to have more time. I think this would require us to have at least a couple of days to have conversation. And that's my ask, that if you defer, that would be great. We will also have the input from other committee members from the AGO. They would officially discuss this in their next meeting and then come up with any recommendations they might have. So that is my request.
Thank you, Councilor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to understand the timeline. I think I saw this in our iPads on Friday. And I learned at the last city council meeting that some of our information is not being shared with the administration in a timely manner. Is that what happened here? Because it was, I saw that Councilor Bassan put it in the iPads and I saw it on Friday. So can we just figure out why it wasn't given to the administration until 20 minutes ago or whatever? I'm just trying to understand that process.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Feeblecorn. Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I think that from my understanding, and I would like to ask Mr. Melendrez to clarify as well, but I think that from what I heard after the last meeting, everything put in the iPads is available on Legistar, which is available to everybody. And I recognize that we should do our best to email the administration and, share these bills. If that is because it's my fault that I didn't email it, then I will own that and it was not intentional. However, I think that I learned that once it's in Legistar and once it's in the iPads, they're one and the same. So it was available. But yet nonetheless, that's kind of where I stand with it. I don't know if that's true or not. As far as if it's in the iPads, it's also available on Legistar.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Mr. Melendrez.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Bassan and Councilor Feeblecorn, we actually have 3 posting protocols that we could use, and one is post to iPads, and another is post to iPads and Legistar, and then another is handed out at the meeting. And so for committees, I don't think we generally do post the item to Legistar. We should have gotten the admin this draft. I know that I spoke to Mr. Bakta earlier, and I extended my apology to him for not getting it to him on Friday. We've been working on getting this draft done for Councilor Bassan, and I think a few of us could have forwarded it over to them on Friday. We did get it to them first thing this morning, along with a red line a little bit earlier this afternoon. And so that's the status of those.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask, and again, I'm not going to die on this hill, but I do think that, Mr. Batka, you just said that you haven't had time to review it, but that there are substantial changes that you've noticed. So to me, they're counterproductive comments. So will you at least just point out what are a couple of the substantial, because the things that you and I talked about, I think that even though they were substantial, I then reviewed, and then I worked with Mr. Melendrez, and we figured out that that's not how they read. And I would like to discuss it so that everyone can hear, and that if they still exist, then we can go ahead and defer and work to correct it. But I do believe that it is possible that what is in the legislation is not how it is being interpreted by all parties.
Mr. Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Councilor Bassan. I think I might have misrepresented. I had 20 minutes to review this, and within 20 minutes, we found items which, in my opinion, are substantial. But even to make an overall assessment of what are the substantial changes, I need more time, and I need more time to scrutinize every changes, with the staff and even with probably AGO and IG, what is the intent of these changes? And therefore, I'm not in a position to even tell you what are the changes that I have concerns about, because I have not been able to read the whole thing.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bucktuck. Go ahead, Councilor Bassan.
Thank you. So I guess I did this backwards, and I would like to ask Ms. Coulon to give us, or Mr. Melendrez, whichever they decide is better, to give us an update on the floor substitute number 3 and what has changed since then and what we removed, please, because I really do believe that it is more technical than substantive. And I would like to, at least for everyone's benefit here, so that whether we defer or not, you all know from staff really what changes did happen that are kind of crystal clear.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez, and who else did you say worked on it?
Ms. Ronquillo helped.
Ms. Ronquillo, sorry.
As well, and so I think I was pretty much involved in doing the majority of the changes on this particular ordinance. So I'm happy to kind of go through the highlights. Essentially, committee members, starting at the beginning, the bill includes several recitals, and it included to add a few additional findings. Those findings appeared more substantive simply, and so they were removed as findings from the ordinance and placed into a more substantive part of the bill. And in particular, there was a finding that proposed that the Inspector General should strive to adhere to the Association of Inspector General Principles and Standards. That if that's a directive that the council wants to give to the Inspector General, it should be in the operative component, not in a finding. And so that was moved down into the operative section of the bill. Similarly, there was a finding about what the Inspector General was supposed to do when it was doing an investigation for the Ethics Board. The finding does not give direction. It just is what it is, a finding. And so that was moved down to give specific direction to the Inspector General where it belonged in the ordinance. We reviewed with the Inspector General and with the sponsor a number of the proposed definitions. And we identified several that did not have a definition that departed from the common meaning of the word. And so a number of those definitions were removed. In fact, all of those definitions were removed where the common meaning was sufficient. The Inspector General did provide us with some literature that gave a few options for definitions for some of the key terms that she would use, or an Inspector General would use in carrying out this ordinance. In particular, the ordinance directs that they investigate for fraud, waste, or abuse. The ordinance did not have definitions for those. In reviewing the literature that was provided to us, the definitions that appeared to have the most clear legal meaning, in particular having elements relative to what constituted those acts and that were limited in scope and in context to the appropriate context for the Inspector General, were replaced with the definitions that were being proposed. There was a section about who the Inspector General manages, and it was amended to limit it to the context of staff and potential contractors that are doing work for the Inspector General. I think the original language could have been read a little bit more broadly than that. One of the bigger changes dealt with the Inspector General's authority to get independent legal counsel. There are a number of independent offices in the city that have been created over time. And I think, experience for the council and the city, I think, has suggested it's worth a discussion about how those independent selections are made. And so the city attorney's office plays a role now with the changes that were recently made to the civilian police oversight ordinance and how independent counsel is selected for that group. And so the change to this ordinance would essentially bring that independent counsel selection in line with what the city council recently did for the CPOA, which is essentially that in the event that an independent counsel is needed, it is still facilitated by the city attorney's office, which is equipped to help find conflict counsel in the event that the city attorney's office is not in the position to give independent advisement to this entity. So just making that consistent with what the council did recently with CPOA. There was another section about how the Inspector General compensation is set. And there was a whole paragraph about what it took to be the Inspector General and suggesting some findings by the council of what the Inspector General possessed or didn't possess. We talked about the independence of the AGO and how that language appeared to sort of telegraph potentially to the AGO what its expectation was in compensation setting. And so that material was removed, and that section now simply states that the committee will review the salary of the Inspector General and notify DFA and Administrative Services of any salary adjustment, which will be subject to budget sufficiency and personnel rules. So the idea is that the salary can be recommended, set forth by the committee. However, there are a couple of checks within the city system on that. Number one being budget sufficiency, which the council has authority over budgetary matters, and then city personnel rules, which the administration would have authority over. And so that would seem to give both the independence that might be appropriate for the AG recommending that salary, also with typical checks and balances in the city system. Next, the Inspector General.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is it possible that after Mr. Melendres describes each item, we can respond?
That's correct. I see your hand up, Mr. Bukta, in the conference room, and as soon as he's done, I will definitely let you respond.
Okay, so I'll just continue. So the next section is that the Inspector General may be removed from office by 2/3 vote of the committee. The language "for cause" has been added there, which I think is probably would have been the case in any event, that, you know, anytime a body acts, by its legal obligation is to have some cause for its action. However, that language has been added to give clarity that removal can only be for cause and not for some arbitrary purpose. And it also includes a provision that says that the city council would also have authority to remove an Inspector General for cause. And again, that being consistent with the changes that the city council recently put in place for the civilian police oversight ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Melendres. Mayor's conference room, Mr. Bukta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 3, item D, which was deleted, and that was actually moved to page 8. I think it is about the peer review. And I'm not very clear. Is it the will or the intent to require Inspector General to go through the peer review? Or is it just recommendation that they should strive to adhere to Association of IG's principles and standards, and then participate in the peer review process by seriously pursuing any recommendations resulting from such process? What I'm not clear is that, is the peer review requirement mandatory, or it is just a suggestion? And why do we have words like seriously pursuing? I mean, if it is a directive, they should just work on any recommendations. That's the duty of IG. If they have any findings from the peer review, they will have to work on fixing those recommendations. So what is the intent here? I'm not too sure. Is it voluntarily that they have to participate in the peer review, or it's a requirement?
Mr. Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I would like to invite Ms. Santisteban in, who is the IG, who I'm sponsoring this by request. She's the one that worked on it. We've been working with staff. We have circled through several times. So I would like to invite her to be able to answer some of these questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Santisteban. Are you on?
I am.
Thank you, ma'am.
The intent is not to take away the requirement for a peer review. The peer review is required every 3 years, so there's no intent there. That merely in saying to strive to adhere to those recommendations or those standards put forth in the AIG document is that there is some conflict with regard to those standards based on state law, our IPRA laws actually preclude us from meeting some of the standards. So we strive to adhere to all of them, with the exception right now that I know of IPRA, where IPRA comes into play. When we talk about seriously pursuing those, that comes in because some of the, and many, quite frankly, of the changes or findings that we had that were indicated in the 2019 peer review and 2000, I guess it ended December 31st, 2018, and the one that just ended for December 31st, 2021, were actual findings that we couldn't do much about. And when I say that, they were left to you. So they are these ordinances and this matter of independence, which, although I am working diligently with council and with our committee to make sure that we can implement, are not necessarily something I can do. So when we say we want to make a serious effort at trying to rectify any findings in that, that is what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mrs. Santisteban. It looks like I see the mayor's conference room.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But where does it say that the peer review is required?
I think Mrs. Santisteban's looking.
Mr. Chair,
Melendez, go ahead.
peer review is dealt with in a couple of places in the bill, and so far we focused on the one that is giving a directive to the Inspector General to strive to adhere to the Inspector General standards. However, there's a separate section in the ordinance that's being changed only slightly, and that one says in particular that the Inspector General shall be subject to quality assurance reviews by an appropriate professional nonpartisan objective group every 3 to 5 years. So that is a process that our, in particular, Inspector General office goes through every 3 to 5 years in order to be sort of audited on its work. The other section deals essentially with a professionalism, perhaps, or quality assurance standard that the city council through this ordinance would be asking that office to essentially strive toward. But that is not the component that is actually the audit function that is executed through the separate section under 217(7)B.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Anybody else want to chime in? I can see Mr. Bhakta's looking through everything right now. Mr. Bhakta, anything further?
I do have several questions, Mr. Chair. On page 3, item E, which was deleted and now it is moved to page 11, line 10. I'll read this line. The IG shall investigate any alleged violation of the Code of Ethics and Election Code that the Board of Ethics and Campaign Practices directs to the Inspector General to investigate. When the IG is assigned an investigation by the Board of Ethics and Campaign Practices, the usual requirements concerning approval of the IG reports by the AGO committee and the publication of report is not followed so as to maintain the rights and duties of the Board of Ethics and Campaign Practices to direct and limit the investigation. I'm concerned about this because this means that this report by IG would not be reviewed by anyone. And we need to look into this. And I think I would like to have our legal department, also maybe city clerk's office, to weigh in on this. So we need time on this.
Okay, I have who was first? Councilor Davis is first.
I see Councilor Bassan is sort of nodding her head, and she may know where I'm going with this. Mr. President, Mr. Chair, I know we have an agenda this evening, and this
Yes.
is important. We've worked on it, but I can sort of see where this might be going. And if we're going to go line by line and ask a bunch of technical questions that I don't think we have the answers to today, I might ask that perhaps we move on the motion to substitute and then try to defer here so we can do this. Or I just feel like if we're going to go through this line by line, we're going to be here till midnight, and we got some other folks that want us to be here. But I mean, we've done it at midnight. I just
I don't know if you noticed, but I was thinking the same thing you were thinking. Councilor Hassan?
We can see where this is going today.
Councilor Hassan?
Mr. Chair, I would like to pass the floor substitute number 3, and then I intend to make a motion for without recommendation so that this goes to the full council, allowing some time for all of this to happen in the next few weeks while also trying to get this to move forward. I will be willing to consider deferring it at full council if we need to. If we can't get some of this ironed out, I believe we should be able to get this ironed out in the next 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or however long before council. But I'm willing to meet with I think it'd be a great idea to meet with the administration, to meet me and our staff, meet with administration, IG and IA in the same room so that we can sit here and go line by line and make everyone feel better so that we're on the same page.
Thank you, Councilor Hassan. I agree with you. So we're gonna go ahead and get to the vote on the committee sub.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes,
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
and
Sorry, Melissa Santisteban had her hand up.
and Ms. Santisteban, did you have your hand up?
I did, but in light of the vote, I'll just wait until we have our discussion.
Thank you. I apologize for missing that.
It's all right.
Okay, so Councilor Bassan, are you going to move?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to change my motion to without recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second? Councilor Feeblecorn, second. And we'll call for the vote.
Mr. Chair, very briefly,
Oh, sorry, Councilor, go.
just on the motion on the floor, I understand why we want to, I understand why the sponsor wants to move the no rec. But I don't think this is ready. We've had it here. This committee looked at it. I think there's lots of discussion back and forth. I do think we need a little more work, and I would support sending it to council when it's ready, but I don't like sending stuff to council just to have 9 people arguing about it with the administration instead of us. So I will be voting against that motion, hoping that we can defer here in committee until we can get it. Obviously, if we get some agreement or understanding, the full council could pull this out of committee at any point and set it on the agenda, but I think it's best to stay here. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Bassan, do you have any further or, okay, so.
Mr. Chair, I think
Councilor
Council Pena has her hand up.
Yes, I see it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Myself and Councilor Davis don't always agree, but I kind of agree. I just feel really bad that, over the weekend, in light of Easter weekend and Good Friday and Holy Thursday, and I really didn't have time to look at it. And it's such an important bill, and Councilor Bassan's worked so hard on it, along with Melissa Santisteban. And I just want to make sure that I do too put the due diligence in. If it goes to City Council with no rec, I mean, I'm fine, but I would prefer that we just defer one last time, and for the admin to really sit down with Councilor Bassan and whomever else, and to really get this fleshed out, because it's really taking some time, and it's, it's very important that we get this situated.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. Councilor Feeblecorn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're on committee substitute number 3, which means it's been here for a while. And I hope whatever the result is, I will support the no rec. But whatever the result is, that we do get everyone in a room and talk through this. I feel like it's been a lot of work for Councilor Bassan and the rest of her team. And I don't know that there's been any urgency in moving it forward. We come here, we have these conversations, and then we go away, and then the next time we come, we start from scratch. And so hopefully whatever the result is here, it results in a group of people who know about this ordinance sitting down and fixing the problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Feeblecorn. I have a comment too. I know when this first came to committee, I don't remember which time it was, but while we were working on it, I thought we were almost ready to push this through, and then we backed off and we deferred it that day. I almost feel that I like the idea. I think we can actually move the no rec and then still sit down at the table and get the things ironed out that we need to get ironed out. So that's my feeling. Anyone else? Okay, it looks like Mayor's conference room has her hand up.
Mr. Chair and committee members, the administration would prefer that we get the chance to sit down with Councillor Bassan, and we have had several discussions, but not after this final version, which was finalized on Friday, but we received it today. I think I would like to have one more chance to sit down with Councillor Bassan, as well as the Inspector General and the Internal Auditor in one room. And therefore, I would request that you just defer it and then not send it without the recommendation to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhakta. I think we just go with Councilor Bassan. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, thank you. You know, I'm going to still urge your support on the no rec. At this point, I'm willing to meet. I'm getting ready to send a message to my analyst and our staff to schedule something ASAP with administration, with the IG and with the IA so that we can get it ironed out. We're just going to keep spinning wheels, I feel like, in committee. And I mean, there was a time where everybody was willing and ready to get things out of here without recommendation. And now here we are, months and months on end with all of these changes that are getting fewer in between. So let's have that conversation, but I hope that we have it before council and we can defer it there if necessary, but I don't think we will have to. I do urge your support, please, on the no rec.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. So the vote is back on the floor. I don't see anyone else's hands up. So we're going to be voting. We'll call the vote for move to council no rec.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
No.
Councillor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
No.
Councillor Sanchez.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-2 vote.
And now we're on the regular bill. Okay, so now we'll move to agenda item C, which is O56. Councilor Bassan by request, it's similar.
Mr. Chair, O56 Committee Substitute 2, amending the Accountability and Government Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 10 of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque. I move a without recommendation.
And looks like a second from Councilor Feeblecorn.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move Committee Substitute number 3 in your iPads and follow up with all of the same comments we just had duplicated for this bill as well.
Thank you, and I have a second by Councilor Feeblecorn, and we're ready for the vote.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
No.
Councillor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Councillor Pena, Councillor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 3-2 vote.
We will now move to agenda item D, O59. And Councilor Feeblecorn, O59.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is O59, adopting a new article in Chapter 13 of the Revised Ordinances of Albuquerque, 1994, Businesses and Occupations, to be known as the Residential Rental Permit Ordinance. Move it to pass.
And second, Councilor Bassan. And it looks like the mayor's conference room.
Mr. Chair, I do have a substitute to move.
Okay,
I could please move that.
sorry, I didn't turn the page.
I would like to move the committee sub that hopefully has been available to everyone since Friday, since that was the intent. So I'll move that.
And it looks like I have a second from Counselor Bassan. And it looks like Mayor's Conference Room has their hand up.
Yes, what do you want to say?
Okay, well, we're waiting for someone to speak in Mayor's Conference Room. I can see here that I have some public speakers.
Just.
We can move to the public comment and then we'll go right back to Mayor's Conference Room.
Mr. Chair, we're doing public comment before we vote on the committee sub.
No, we can go to the committee side. Sorry about that.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So the committee sub that's before you greatly simplifies the bill, and it does remove the permit fees. And so basically what we have now is just a registration that asks for some basic information that would be updated annually if there are updates, and there is no cost to landlords. So I urge folks support on the committee sub.
And do we have a second? Oh, we already had the second, right? Okay. Anybody else? I don't see anyone, so we'll go to the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pivocorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
That was the committee sub in your iPads, counselors. Any other further?
Final bill or something.
Now we're looking at the final bill as substituted. And now we do the public comment, right?
Thank you. We needed. Nope. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker on public comment is Rachel Biggs, followed by Wolf Baumgartner.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Rachel Biggs with Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless. We come to stand in strong support of Ordinance 059. This is a modest step and good move in the right direction to give us the information that we need to look at further programs to incentivize landlords as we're looking to incentivize landlord participation in our rental assistance programs, our housing voucher programs. This is really necessary information that will help us design great landlord incentive programs moving forward, and we look forward to its passage. And thank you to the sponsor for bringing it forward.
Our next speaker is Wolf Baumgartner, followed by Catherine McGill.
Good evening. My name is Wolf Baumgartner. I'm an attorney with the New Mexico the New Mexico Center on Poverty. We stand in support of this ordinance. As everybody here knows, rental prices have reached a record high in Albuquerque. A huge number of Riqueños are impacted by these rising prices. 40% of homes in Albuquerque are rentals. Unsurprisingly, with the skyrocketing cost of rent, evictions are also at an all-time high, and Albuquerque is facing an unprecedented crisis of unhoused people. Minority communities are disproportionately impacted by this crisis of evictions and unhoused folks. For example, in Morelos, which is 80% Hispanic, 95% of houses are rentals. I can just tell you anecdotally that my office receives so many calls every week from people who are about to lose their housing because they just can't afford their skyrocketing rent. And right now, there's really little help that we can offer those people. The eviction moratorium's over, eviction assistance program funding has dried up, and there are really only a few overburdened attorneys who can help people without charging any fees. We want the city to do something to stem this horrific thing that's happening in our city. The ordinance is just a modest start to understanding and addressing these skyrocketing rents. Gathering this information is just a tool that the city can use to help address community health and safety concerns. This information is a necessary first step to understanding and addressing the crisis. So the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty thanks you for supporting this ordinance.
Our next speaker is Catherine McGill.
President Sanchez and committee members, my name is Catherine McGill, New Mexico Black Leadership Council. I'm here tonight to request your support for O2259. We must work very hard to discuss this issue and not conflate it with unsubstantiated claims that this ordinance will result in an unwillingness to build more affordable housing. These tactics are at best akin to Chicken Little, who declared erroneously that the sky was falling, or in the worst case scenario, deliberately obtuse. We need a rental registry, and numerous examples of other cities have implemented them and do not report a decrease in affordable housing. I worked in city government for many years, and I will not argue that there are failures in the rollout and implementation of sound policies all too often. Those failures happen, however, when there is no appropriate cross-sector collaboration. We could have that in this case. There is no downside to having a rental registry that is implemented well, and we need it for appropriate and informed decision-making regarding housing policy. Making a rental registry work depends on key elements: clear and comprehensive requirements. I think we have that. Reliable data management, we can get it. Consistent and effective enforcement, timely updates and reviews, and most importantly, stakeholder collaboration. And when I say stakeholders, I mean everyone, not just property owners, but it must also include tenants, intermediary organizations, and government officials. This rental registry is not a punitive action taken against property owners. It is a necessary next step that this public body must take. This registry is an essential tool to improve the accuracy and availability of rental housing data, which then can be used to provide valuable information to this body to make decisions related to tenant protections, affordable housing, and homelessness prevention. So the question is not whether we need it, but how we roll it out. I am hopeful that once you pass this legislation out of this committee and that it passes the full council, we can create a cross-sector collaboration among all the stakeholders for successful implementation. It's time for this to change.
Thank you. Does that conclude the comment on this bill?
That concludes public comment. Thank you. There you go. Thanks.
Okay, I have a question of the sponsor. Isn't all this information already in the lease?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is not information that's available in a lease. This is information that is available to the city. And the city does not have access to this data right now. So right now, we don't have a handle on, for example, how many rental units there are in certain parts of town. We don't really have a handle on how many affordable rental units there are in particular sections of town. So the reason for this is so that that information that is, of course, in a lease would be made available to the city so that we can then design public policy, incentives, those types of programs to really increase affordable housing within Albuquerque. And I'll just say that, you know, when I met with housing experts many months ago, and we sat down and I asked them, the first question was, what can we do to really, you know, help with affordable housing in our city? Their number one answer was, we need a registry. We don't know what we have and we don't know what we need.
And I have another question is, have we spoke to the rental groups, the people that are actually involved, the landlord groups, to see what they say about this ordinance?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we had a series of meetings back December and January. The result of that, what we heard a lot of folks said was that we had a little bit too much information being requested. So we definitely pared that down in the committee substitute that we're listening to tonight. And the other comment was that they did not want to pay a registration fee. While I certainly think they were minimal and necessary, that was a really strong belief that they did not want to pay a registration fee. So we have changed it from a permit to a free registration in the committee sub that's before you tonight. So all that was based on feedback from the public.
Okay, and I'm also showing if they don't enroll, letters of compliance, 3 letters of compliance then equals $100 per month fee for not enrolling.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we want to make sure that we are getting a real idea of what rental units are available in our community. And if there are no ramifications for not registering in this free registry that will take about 5 minutes per unit, we want to make sure that there is some way to ensure that people do register their units so that when we are designing those types of, say, incentive programs for one quadrant of town that doesn't have enough affordable housing in it, that we actually have a real picture of what's going on in the market.
And did you go over that with the individual landlords that if they decide that they don't want to enroll after their 3rd letter, that they get $100 per month fee for not enrolling?
That has been in the bill since the beginning, Mr. Chair. So that has not changed in the committee sub. That was in the original bill, and it certainly has been out there, I believe, since November. This has been out in the public.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make sure to put in my 2 cents, and I'm pretty sure Councilor Feeblecorn knows about it, but just for the record that as much as I think there's good intention behind this and that we need to do what we can for affordable housing, I do not think that it is place of our government to instill this sort of registry upon private property owners, and therefore I will not be in support of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just respond, the city already requires that short-term rental owners register with the city so that we know where those are. And I certainly don't think it's a stretch to ask that the government also know where long-term rentals are that could actually impact the availability of housing for our low-income neighbors. So I understand Councilor Bassan's point, but it's just a disagreement in principle.
Thank you, Councilor Feeblecorn. Anyone else? Okay, so we're back on final bill is substituted. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
No.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Was this, I apologize, I know you're not supposed to talk during a roll call, but my internet was going in and out. Was this for a Duke Pass or is it for a no rec? Okay,
you pass as substituted.
so
It's for Duke Pass
for
also.
full council, because I can't support it and I don't really want the bill to just die here, so my
Counselor, I think you'd have to wait until after the vote and then pull it back up for reconsideration if you choose.
okay, and no.
Counselor Sanchez,
No.
that fails on a 2-3 vote.
But who makes the motion for reconsideration? Can I make that motion since I voted in the negative? Okay, I'd like to, I apologize for that. And I don't know if you can hear me now, but it keeps saying unstable internet. If you can hear me, just say, okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion for reconsideration for no rec to full council.
Okay, Councilor Pena just made a motion for no rec to full council. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I think that the motion needs to be for reconsideration first, and then we'll vote on that. And then if that passes, I believe that then another motion for no recommendation may happen.
Correct.
Thank you. That is correct. So the motion is for reconsideration. And do we have a second? Councilor Bassan. So the vote on the floor is motion for reconsideration. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Sure. Yes.
Counselor Pivocorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, now we vote for no rec. And do we have a second? Counselor Pivocorn,
I was just seconding.
second, okay. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
No.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pivocorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
No.
That passes on a 3-2 vote.
We will now move to agenda item E-068. Counselor Davis for Jones by request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for an independent hearing officer ordinance and procedures update. I move it to pass. Or recommended to pass.
And we have a second by Counselor Pivocorn.
Mr. Chair, I think this has been available on the iPads. I think the write-up is sufficient. It just, we've, as the committee knows, we've been working towards a process to create our city hearing officer, streamline our city hearing officer process for things like nuisance, for speed cameras that some councilors voted for, and other things. And so this is just consolidating some of those pieces, and I urge your support.
Counselors.
There may be a committee sub, I think.
Yes, there is a committee sub in your iPads.
Thank you. I would move that committee sub, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we have a second by Counselor Pivocorn. And Mayor's Conference Room.
Mr. Chair, we have, Mr. Chair, thank you. We have City Clerk, Mr. Watson here. You would like to weigh in.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Counselor Jones and the committee for considering this bill. We've been working on it now for 3 years. It does streamline a lot of the procedures in the hearing office and about 30 different ordinances. It repeals a number of ordinances that are no longer in effect. And then it implements a new contract debarment procedure because there was a lot of fleshing out needed in that. And so it's a very technical bill, but we really appreciate council's work on it. And a special thanks to council staff who did a better write-up than I ever could have done. So.
Thank you. And it looks like we are back on the committee substitute. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pivocorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
It passes on a 5-0 vote.
And that brings us to the final bill as substituted. And Counselor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if Counselor Davis would, I feel like traditionally when we're doing something for another counselor, we typically try to do no rec so that they have the opportunity to discuss it at full council and advocate for it. So I don't know if it would be, if you would be willing, Counselor, to change it to no rec.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think that unless we were prepared to just do a do pass, because I think this was fairly technical, but I'd be happy to do that. We can make it a no rec if you'd like.
Okay, so now the vote's going to be no rec to full council. Thank you, Counselor Bassan, and thank you, Counselor Davis, as substituted. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Wait, Mr. Chair, did you need the second from the first person who seconded it earlier, and did that happen? Because I didn't see it.
Oh, no, it didn't. It didn't. You're right.
I want to make sure that we don't screw it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did not agree, but I will. Yes,
Okay, so who is the second?
that was me.
Thank you, Counselor Pivocorn. Okay, we'll go on to the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pivocorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item F. and that's 075. And that's Counselor Davis by request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 075 amends the nuisance abatement ordinance, which is Chapter 11, Article 1. This includes updates that expands our nuisance coverage and consolidates the way we address nuisances through that new hearing process. I move it to pass.
Thank you. And I have a second by Counselor Feeblecorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we have an amendment.
Yes.
To go wherever the committee wants. I think the administration had asked for a particular amendment. I agreed to sponsor it for discussion purposes. I don't have any objection to it, and so I would move floor amendment number or committee amendment number 1.
Okay, is that number 8? Okay,
We have it up.
and we have it up.
Mr. Chair, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. If we need further explanation, I'd ask the administration to do it. I think they proposed it and had more technical experience, but I think it's fine as written.
Okay, Counselor Bassan,
Mr. Chair, I'm offering a second to Amendment 1.
thank you.
Thank you.
Second by Counselor Bassan. And Mayor's Conference Room.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Mari Kempton with the Consumer Protection Office. This was just an amendment to add one additional violation to the list of already illegal acts that are currently defined as a public nuisance. So you'll see in the bill, this bill does add a number of new violations of state and city ordinance as public nuisances that the city could then enforce through this revised ordinance. And so this is one additional violation for unlawful removal and diminution of services, which typically means cutting off utilities or making a dwelling inaccessible in violation of state law, and was intended to be included in the list in the original bill, but was inadvertently cut off. So this is just including this as was intended with the original bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're back on Amendment A. And we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena. Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
And Counselor Davis, it looks like there's Amendment 2 in here, labeled number B.
Perhaps someone could share it. I'm not sure I know what that one is.
Okay, it looks like Mr. Cornelius just popped it up.
Is this the language amendment, I think, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It is. Mr. Chair, committee amendment number 2 simply responds to some of the concerns we had in the recent issue. Obviously, we have promoted language access as a council and as a city, and should be commended and have been for such. But we recently saw that some of our nuisance and zoning issues don't always translate appropriately to the right folks. And so as we learned of that property on San Mateo. And so this amendment would require that the planning department, when issuing notices, or excuse me, not just planning department, with the city when issuing notices relating to nuisances, would include instructions for obtaining additional language services in those notices. And so I'd move committee amendment number 2.
Thank you. Counselor Feeblecorn, were you seconding or did you have a comment? Number second?
Seconding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we got a second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Anyone else? Okay, we're moving to amendment number 2, listed as B, and we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan.
Yeah.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes,
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
thank you. We're back on final bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome any questions, but otherwise would urge your support. And I think we have the support of the administration if they care to weigh in, but I don't know that we need to.
Thank you. Anyone? That looks pretty clean. So let's get it done. Ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We will now move to agenda item I, which is 078. Counselor Bassan, Counselor Pena by request.
Counselor Pena, do you want to do it? Sorry.
If
Did
you
we
could,
skip a couple?
you guys are fading in and out on my internet. I think you can hear me, but you guys aren't coming in clearly on my side.
Up at the top.
Oh, wait, say that again.
Okay, I'll do it when we get to that, but Counselor Davis was pointing out that we didn't quite finish the other maybe.
No, I believe we just need to finish. Mr. Chair, it's up to the chair's discretion, but I just want to be sure we didn't skip a couple of agenda items.
Oh,
like
we did.
Before we get to I.
G. Sorry about that.
G is 078.
G is 078.
Yes.
Oh, it's,
Yes.
I see it now. Okay, got it.
I want to vote against it, Mr. President, or Mr. Chair. I don't want to.
Well, there was actually a mistake here, so we're actually fixing it now. So G is 078.
Okay,
We're back on it. We just needed to fix the technical error there.
okay. So Mr. Chair, 078 is amending Chapter 7, Article 15, Section 4, enabling the city to create parking offense for vehicles with multiple automated speed enforcement fines concurrently in default. Amending Chapter 8, Article 5, Section 1, creating a city code petty misdemeanor offense for parking a vehicle on city streets with multiple automated speed enforcement fines concurrently in default. I move it to pass.
And it looks like we have a second from Counselor Feeblecorn. And it looks like there's an amendment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I would like to move Amendment 1, which will be on your screen shortly. This is, and as soon as it goes down for everybody too. So the administration asked that this gets added in as it was left off before, so it's adding in the severability clause, and then renumbering thereafter. And there's a little bit more at the bottom, but so there's the explanation for everybody. It's adding in that boilerplate language. I would move amendment number 1.
thank you. I can't see the screen, so Counselor Feeblecorn's a second. I see it. And we'll go for the vote on Amendment 1.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes, on the amendment.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
passes on a 5-0 vote.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move amendment number 2.
Thank you. And we have Amendment number 2. Go ahead, Counselor Bassan.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I would like to move amendment number 2, which is also coming from the administration, that's adding in the outstanding parking violation issued pursuant to sections for repeated non-payment of automated speed enforcement, and then renumbering accordingly. And then, as you can see, it has the administration ended up moving down, removing the if alleged violator does not appear, but then we added it later on, which I think you'll see a little bit further down as well. And if the administration wants to be more specific with everything, but this is regarding the immobilization of subject vehicles. So if the alleged violator, oh wait, now slow down. Thank you. If the alleged violator does not appear in response to a traffic or parking citation, and there are at least 3 or more outstanding violations, and further fails to respond to the notice informing the alleged violator of the violations, or if the alleged violator does not appear in response to at least 1 or more of the parking citations, and further fails to respond to the notice informing the alleged violator of the violation, then after that, a little bit lower, we'll be inserting that it will be applicable to the unpaid automated speed enforcement fine. So the idea here is going to be that if people have a vehicle that accrues 3 or more unpaid parking citations, then we can immobilize the offending vehicle. This amendment also adds that if they're amending the parking enforcement vehicle immobilization ordinance so that the city can commence immobilization of a vehicle for a single unpaid ASC related parking citation, the city's current practice of only immobilizing after 3 or more unpaid parking citations would remain in effect for all other non-ASC related parking citations. But there's a note that says, although this amendment would enable the city to immobilize a vehicle for single unpaid ASC related parking citations, a vehicle would have to be associated with 3 or more unpaid ASC fines in order to be eligible for this related parking citation. It's a whole mouthful. And so if the administration wants to go ahead and clarify that, I invite them to, but at the same time, this is adding in that if people are not paying, then there's a little bit more teeth.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Bears Conference Room, do you have any more to add?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Montoya, Director for DMD. Our attorney is on the line as well, and the Deputy Director, if there are any specific questions regarding both of the amendments in the bill itself.
Thank you. Councilors, do you have any questions? We need a second. Oh, Councilor Davis, are you doing this? Are you moving a second or you have a question? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Chair, and I think Councilor Feeblecorn is offering the second. So in my reading of this, a vehicle would still have to accumulate 3 automated speed enforcement citations in order to be immobilized. Did I misread that immobilization would also apply to regular parking tickets as well, or am I just overreading that in my haste?
Are you talking about B on the second page?
The amendment that we're talking about, yes, sir.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I would hope that the city legal could go ahead and weigh in and clarify for Councilor Davis.
I see.
Yes, or Mr. Magida could also speak to this, but that's correct, Councilor Davis, that the bill as originally introduced would have required 3 unpaid speeding violations plus 3 unpaid parking tickets before the city would immobilize a vehicle. So what this amendment is intended to do is now to now indicate that we can immobilize a vehicle after the second unpaid parking. But so it still requires, and Mr. Magida can correct me if I'm wrong, it still requires 3 unpaid speeding violations.
And so, Mr. Chair, Ms. Keefe, or Mr. Magida, takes automated speed enforcement out. Did I read this that it would also apply to standard parking citations, which we already have a rule for or law for, right? Or am I overreading this?
Councilor Davis, the intent was to not change that provision.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Councilors, if there's no questions or comments, we're going to go ahead and we have a second from Councilor Feeblecorn. We'll move to a vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 4-1 vote.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move amendment number 3.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, you're seeing it on the screen that this is adding in a new section 1. Section 1 is amended as follows. That it says BASC fine notice. And then as you can see on the screen, it says information about what the fine notice is, but then we added in the ASC fine notice shall clearly explain the process for requesting a hearing, explain the hearing options, provide the deadline to request a hearing, and identify where the request shall be submitted. Thank you, Mr. Cornelius, for scrolling through it. And then section 2, there is still delivery, which is the same. We didn't add anything in further on that part, but there's a little bit more further down. So there's still more about response to the ASE fine notice, a nomination about registered owner, all of that was there before. Mayor's conference room wants to say something, so I might not be representing them well if they want to go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Councilor Bassan. The crux of this bill is that there's been a recent change in state law, which will now allow us to provide people who have been cited for violating the automated speed camera program the option of just doing a paper hearing or submitting basically a hearing, their arguments online. That's the gist of it. Is right now, until about 3 weeks ago, the only way to contest a ticket from a speeds camera was to have an in-person or Zoom hearing. And other states have this option where you can basically submit a written statement regarding why you are not should not be held responsible for speeding. And it does serve both the public because it saves them time, and it also saves us a lot of staff time. We find that there are a number of people whose cars have been stolen and things like that, and we think that this could be addressed through the online hearing procedure. So that's what this amendment does.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move that amendment, number 3.
Thank you. So we're going to be voting on Amendment 3. And I need a second from Councilor Pat Davis.
I'm fine to second it, Mr. Chair, but I have a follow-up question before we proceed.
Sorry about that. Go ahead with your second question. And question for the mayor's conference room.
I'm not sure. It might be for our clerk. We just did an amendment to the nuisance ordinance that required notice in or how to obtain assistance in multiple languages. Would that apply to this through our new hearing program? If not, can we work on some language here before we get to full council that would ensure that everybody knows what they're doing before we try to take away their cars?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Davis, we could certainly work on that with council before it gets to the floor. That seems like something that could easily be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I love it. And there seems to be some language in another bill we just did, I think would be wonderful for that. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Thank you, Councilor Davis. And Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that, as Mr. Watson and the administration works on that, I fully support that language being put in when we get back to council.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Councilor Davis, your hand's still up? Okay, it's down. All righty. So with that, looks like we can move to the vote on Amendment 3.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 4-1 vote.
All righty. Councilors, I was just informed.
Oh, let me go back to the original bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. So councilors, we are now on the original bill, final bill as amended. And do I have a second?
Mr. Chair, we already did that part. I don't know if my co-sponsor does want to add anything or if we are good to go, but I know I urge your support.
And Councilor Pena, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilor Bassan. I don't really have anything to add. I just urge your support. I know this has been something that's, I think it's been effective in terms of helping reducing speeding and other issues that we're having in the community. It's unfortunate that we have to go down this path, but I think it's important that we make sure that if we're going to do something, we make sure that we do it right. So thank you for your support.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 4-1 vote.
Okay, we now move to agenda item H, R54. And H is Councilor Sanchez directing the Solid Waste Department to develop a process for retrieval, return, and disposal of abandoned shopping carts. Making an appropriation to fund a contract to administer the abandoned shopping cart program. Move deferral to next FGO meeting, May 8th, 2023. Need a second. Counselor Bassan. Vote for deferral.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item. I, it's R-115, Counselor Bassan by request.
Mr. Chair, R115 is adopting the 2023 through 2027 Consolidated Plan, Program Year 2023 Action Plan, and Program Investment Summary for the expenditure of Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grant Funds, providing an appropriation to the Department of Family and Community Services for the 2023 U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Entitlement Funds. I move it to pass.
And a second by Counselor Feeblecorn. Counselors, any questions for staff and administration? Seeing none, go to the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes,
Pass on a 5-0 vote.
thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item J. And that's R-116. Counselor Pena for Counselor Grout by request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Counselor Grout asked that I read these into the record. So R 23-116, approving and authorizing the acceptance of grant funds from the New Mexico State Library for the basic state grants in aid and providing an appropriation to the Department of Arts and Culture in fiscal year 2023. I urge you to pass on behalf of Counselor Grout.
Thank you. Counselor Bassan, second. Any comment? Nope. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we request, we need immediate action on this. We urge your support on that because we need to spend this money by June 30th.
Okay. Okay, so,
Immediate action.
okay, so Counselor Pena is moving for immediate action. Do we have a second? Counselor Feeblecorn. And so the vote is for immediate action to spend the money.
Mr.
And
Chair, could I ask a question to avoid a delay at council?
thank you. Go ahead.
Just really quickly to the administration. I know this is last year's or current year's end of year state money. Why is it so late getting to us? Is this been sitting with us, or is this just one of those things where they have to push the grant out at the last minute too?
I would have director respond to this.
Yes, Counselor Sanchez, Counselor Davis. I would say it's a combination of both. This is a cycle we go through every year. We try really hard to get it to you sooner, but we are relying on the state, who's not the fastest ever. And then we did have our own internal delays getting it to you for your approval. But it will be in our coffers and ready to spend the moment full council votes on it.
Thank you, Director. And maybe offline, I'd ask Ms. Dolan to help us a little bit. I know she and I have been working really hard with our staff and y'all's to expedite this process, but it's become once a week now that we have a thing that has been with the administration for quite some time. The council's asked to do urgently without a lot of research, and we're trying to make that process faster, but it's not working. And so we need to work on that because departments don't have the funds they need to do the programs that folks rely on. And we're missing stuff and it starts to add up. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to make my point now, and I'll save my speech for from the full council, but just another reminder that we got to work on this process better.
And I agree with that as well. Here we are, city council, we need to make sure that that we get these things in a timely manner so that we can vote on them and not have to worry about these kinds of things coming up. And I agree with you 100%. Councilor Davis, I will support this, but because we do need to get this immediate action taken care of. But also it's, listen to what we have to say. Please, we're trying to work with you all the time. And, we need to make sure we get these things in a timely manner. So thank you. And now we are voting on immediate action.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Fablecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
And we will now move on to agenda item K, which is R118. And it's Counselor Pena for Grout.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, R 23-118 declaring the city's intent to collaborate with the Albuquerque Public Schools to create a program to prevent children's exposure to trauma and violence, mitigate negative effects of childhood exposure to trauma, and to increase knowledge and awareness of this issue. Directing the Albuquerque Police Department, the Albuquerque Fire and Rescue, and the Albuquerque Community Safety Department to enact protocols for first responders scenarios that involve school-age youth. And I would move a do pass, and I think we have some visitors from APS with us this afternoon as well. Some familiar, awesome faces.
Thank you, Counselor Pena. Then do I have a second? Counselor Bassan, second. And it looks like we have some speakers with us from APS. Mrs. Mauer?
So I'll just start and then I can have Vicki talk real briefly. Some of you may remember we did the Handle with Care program. We started actually before the pandemic with this program. It was very highly successful during the pandemic. Because kids weren't in school, it went down and we discontinued it, but we're looking to partner again to reestablish the Handle with Care program. It involves both the county and the city, all the first responders, and we need your partnership to make this work. I'm going to let Vicki Price, by the way, I'm the executive director for the Student Family Community Supports Division for Albuquerque Public Schools. Vicki Price is the senior director for counseling, and she can give you just a brief description of what the program actually does.
Good evening, committee members. Thank you very much. This is a really important program, and this partnership is vital to help us support students in APS and around the city. What this is just a notification to us from first responders when students have experienced a traumatic event at their house. So when a first responder is at the house and they realize there's school-age children there, they get their name and determine whether they are an Albuquerque Public School student. They just send us a notification. We don't know what happened. We don't know what traumatic event occurred, and we don't ask the students about it. All it is eyes on for us to make sure that day that their teacher, their counselor, the nurse, and the principal all know that that student experienced a traumatic event the night before or over the weekend. This way we can put kid gloves around the student, make sure that we're watching them. If they seek us out, we can talk to them about what happened. But again, we don't question the student about the event or ask them any questions. We wait until they let us know if they need support. Often the students are hungry or tired or haven't gotten their homework done the night before. So we can put all sorts of things in place to make sure that their day at school is one of ease for them, and that we make sure we support the student in coming back to school and also continuing wraparound services in the future. So if there's needs for clothing or food or anything else mental health supports moving forward, that the student is now on our radar. So I would really encourage that you guys vote for this. Having a commitment from the first responders is something that we didn't have as last time. There was more of a verbal commitment and a verbal handshake, but I think it's important that we really get it on the books that everybody's committed to making this happen.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And it looks like we actually have someone on public comment as well.
That's correct. We have Marilyn Beck, public comment. Thank you.
Ms. Beck.
Thank you. I guess city councilors, this is new. I usually testify in front of the legislature, and this is the first time I get to come before you. My name is Marilyn Beck, and I am the founder and executive director of New Mexico Child First Network. We are dedicated to improving the lives and families of those most impacted by our child welfare systems. We were a partner with the Handle with Care conference last year in West Virginia. This is a program that started out of West Virginia and that, like everyone before you has said, has actually been at APS. Las Cruces has tried it, but it just has not kept. We are very, very hopeful and optimistic that with a true collaboration of these interagency partners, and then frankly with the leadership of the city council, that we're going to actually be able to make a difference in these lives. I was fortunate enough to attend the Handle with Care conference. It will be again in October in West Virginia. I hope that we have a much bigger group coming from New Mexico this year. And it really is a national leading best practice to have a partnership between first responders, the school districts, and then providers, and just really get hands-on care. It was hard to attend this national conference coming from a state where we are 50th out of 50th. West Virginia was 42nd out of 50th, and the entire conference was how do we do better? And it was hard to be the only person from New Mexico in that conference. And so to come back from that conference and say, we've done this before, we can do it again, but it's going to take all of us to do this and really commit. As we take this process from here until passage and then implementation, you're going to learn a lot about adverse childhood experiences and public determinants of social health. And if we can do anything to reduce adverse childhood experiences, reduce trauma, and then make someone's life a little bit better in a very traumatic situation, our entire society will be improved for it. And I just can't thank you all enough for really taking the lead on this. And we should all be proud we're here together. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. I just want to comment on this as a retired law enforcement officer. I mean, there was so many times that you walked away from a situation and you just didn't know how that situation was going to be handled or what was going to be going through that child's mind the next day. And I can only imagine how many times we dealt with children who were in with these same stress factors, family violence, drug-related issues, medical episodes, neglect of a household member, family disturbance, school-age children facing housing instability, self-harm or suicide. We'd run into these things constantly as police officers. And I used to make an effort to contact the family to make sure that the family and friends were actually helping out. I know it's just something that's extremely, extremely important. And for this to be moving towards the school and actually have the individuals at the school help out with that child's success the next day is just a great thing. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the other counselors would as well. And Counselor Bassan has her hand up and Mayor's Conference Room has her hand up. Counselor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I'll be willing to hear from the Mayor's Conference Room first, and then I had a couple questions.
Thank you. Mayor's Conference Room, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, this is Deputy Chief Cecily Barker with Albuquerque Police Department. And we just want to let everybody know that we are committed to continue with the Handle with Care program. We've recently revamped the training for that program with our department and updated the special order on March 8th of this year. And we are currently still sending emails to APS when we have these types of calls.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Barker. Counselor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, kind of from everyone, when it comes to Dr. Muir and Ms. Price and APD and AFR, can you all tie in where All Faiths Advocacy Center comes into play on this? Because I just asked today and organized that we're going to get a presentation at council next week. But I know that they are, I don't want to like go off on that since we're going to have a presentation, but I'm hoping that all of you, I know Crimes Against Children in APD, and I think AFR works regularly with them, but I would really hope that if you all aren't working together, that this is, I would assume you are, because you should be. But do you work with, does APS work with All Faiths or no?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Councilmember Sun, we actually have some agreements with All Faiths, not for this particular program, because in this program, like Ms. Price said, we don't ask, what happened, that type of thing, but we do referrals to them. Our health and wellness teams do, and we have a couple of agreements for All Faiths and some of their programs that they have. So yes, we have partnered with them and will continue partnering as long as they're willing to partner with us.
Okay, great. Thank you. That makes me happy to hear, because again, it seems obvious that of course and it makes sense. You're not supposed to be asking on APD, but that's what they specialize in. So, but APD and AFR, do you all, I would like confirmation that I'm not totally off the beat on this one.
Councilor Bassan, and on behalf of AFR, we have multiple ways that we report different circumstances to different agencies. So Handle with Care is a little different than if we were to work with All Faiths or another reporting tool for a child that might be a welfare issue or a child welfare issue. In this case, this would be something where we wouldn't be sending any additional information over to APS related to the circumstance. So I look at it as with Handle with Care, they might have a fire at their house and we would still maybe assist them with services there, but we just want the teachers to know that might be why the child is tired at school the next day. So these are kind of the ones that don't fit into other reporting, where we're letting the teachers know that that child would need additional support, but we're not telling them what the support would be, because for AFR, this would run us into HIPAA compliance issues. Whereas with Handle with Care, there's no HIPAA compliance issues there. So the reporting and working with All Faiths is kind of separate from Handle with Care. It could be a circumstance where we might still do the separate reporting and working with them in other capacities and then letting APS know that there's a Handle with Care situation. But in this one specifically, there's no additional information. And I don't know if APD or ACS need to add anything.
Well, I could add a little bit to that. I think, Councilor Bassan, is that this is more of a notification system, a notification to have eyes on, not a referral system for services necessarily. So maybe that's where it's a little bit different. Now, once they do a notification for us and we start getting to know what this child needs, of course, then we're going to make referrals to all sorts of different outside services. But this particular program is more of a notification system.
Okay.
Council President and City Council members, this is Mariela with ACS. I think one of the cool things that is now tying some of this together is our pilot program at West Mesa High School. We have actual counselors and what we are considering a teacher, but it's a coordinator who we are going to hire a teacher to potentially run this school-based VIP program. So we've been working with the Kellogg Foundation and the principal there to create this program and then run it through the cluster program. So I think this would be like a part 2 potentially, because then when we get those referrals or when we have them, we will already be working with these families and these students. So it does allow for a deeper relationship, but we're also already at the school. So the other piece of this is that the student has a second level of like a place to go, a safe space for them to go, a place for them to process, and ultimately also just a second level of protection. So we'll keep you up to date on that piece with the school-based VIP program. But I do think that will give it a second level of assistance for these students.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan.
Mr. Chair, and thank you all. That's clarifying, and I appreciate that, because it's amazing when we can fill a gap, and that's what this sounds like it's doing. So I I'm good to go with all of that. I just want to, while I have this, and then I won't interrupt again after that, I would be remiss to say, would you consider no rec? Because this is Counselor Grouts, and I want to make sure I do all the same situation for everybody as well, that, you know, I support it. I can't imagine anybody on council not supporting it, but this is her bill, so I don't know if we should move it without rec so that she has the opportunity to represent it fully.
I would second that.
I would change my motion. I probably should have done that on the last one as well. I didn't, so.
Okay, so the vote is to council without rec.
Mr. Chair, who was the second on the original motion?
Counselor Bassan.
Thank you.
I still second that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're ready for the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
And counselors, one thing I have to backtrack. If you can all move back to 056.
56.
56,
Item C.
056. It looks like we didn't vote on the final bill without rec as substituted. So we just need to vote on that. And Councilor Bassan, that was yours by request, amending the accountability and government ordinance, chapter 2, article 10, of revised ordinance, Albuquerque. And you had moved to do pass, and we had the committee sub.
No.
Refresh everybody, correct?
Yeah, but no, Mr. Chair, I did change, even though it's scripted for do pass, my motion was for without recommendation per all of the other conversation we had regarding 055.
Correct.
Correct. So we just need to make sure that we complete that vote. And do I have a second?
We don't need it.
We don't need it. Okay.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yep.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Feeblecorn,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
and Counselor Sanchez.
That's a yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, everyone. There being no further business, this FGO committee meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.